In an article on the value of getting out to vote, Time magazine's Nancy Gibbs wrote that voting is an act of faith and the possibility that in a true democracy anything can happen. However, not every voting age adult seems to share her optimism. College students and young adults in particular are left vastly underrepresented on election day. Therefore, it's important we reject the notion that our individual votes don't matter and push ourselves to understand the significance of our vote and the weight that it can really carry. The United States has a representative form of government whereby politicians are elected through the tallying of the individual votes of all eligible adults. These representatives then make political decisions on behalf of the people who elected them. This system is designed to ensure that the political sphere of the United States is relatively concordant with the values and beliefs of the greatest number of citizens. However, this system of self-governance through proxy is most efficient only if everybody votes. Sadly, regardless of the United States' rich history of remarkably close elections, the idea that one's vote truly matters can be hard to realize, and, as such, voter turnout in the United States is remarkably low, especially among certain age groups. First, in order to understand the importance and merit of exercising one's right to vote, it is crucial to recognize the significance of the issue of insufficient voter turnout in America. The first step to recovery is admitting that you have a problem. Not enough people in the United States are getting out to vote, and that is a big problem that can carry with it some serious consequences. If every affected citizen isn't involved in the election process, the political environment may grow in such a way that it doesn't efficiently reflect the needs and ideals of the general populace. Effectively, if a person or group of people fail to cast a vote, it will be less likely that the political process will naturally produce a candidate that will consider that person or group's needs. So many Americans don't vote and are left only to hope that whoever is chosen doesn't represent them poorly. A voter turnout study conducted by the United States Election Project revealed that only around 138 million Americans, or 58.1% of the voting eligible population, participated in the 2016 general election. This means that just under half of us were not involved in the decision to elect the President of the United States. Even compared to other countries, the United States ratio of participating voters to voting age adults is drastically low. According to the Pew Research Center, voter turnout in the U.S. is beaten out by that of Canada, where 62.12% of voting age citizens cast a ballot in 2015. An even more extreme comparison would be that of the U.S. against South Korea and Australia, which both boast a voter turnout of nearly 80%. The United States' low voter turnout rate of 58.1% may be considered by some to be an effective sample of the population. However, while this theory certainly seems statistically reasonable, it disregards the possibility that the non-voting 41.9% is predominated by groups whose lifestyles or beliefs may affect voting behavior. For example, among those who do not vote in the United States, a disproportionately high number are young adults. If young people are not voting, the country will be unable to produce office holders that can secure young adults' voting interests. In fact, according to Jordan Cormier, a political science researcher for the Defend Our Future Foundation, only around 12% of lower to middle class 18 to 24-year-olds vote. Cormier warns that by failing to get out and vote, young people will allow other groups with opposing interests to gain more control over the compass of our democracy. This means that some of the more crucial voting interests of young adults, such as environmental conservation, as well as healthcare and immigration reform, may continue to go largely unheeded by those in power if the voter turnout of the younger generation isn't improved. A major contributor to the United States' startlingly low voter turnout for the young and old alike is the classic American attitude which asserts that one's vote doesn't matter. With the country's electoral college and increasing population, it can be easy for an individual to feel as though their ballot is only a drop in the bucket. However, historically speaking, the very same country which has fostered this voting apathy has held some very close elections. Some, within one or a few votes of a tie, offer a valuable insight into the sensitive pendulum that determines election outcomes in the United States, and seem to refute the notion that any individual's vote doesn't matter. In an article written by Domenico Montanaro, the senior political correspondent of National Public Radio, he recounts that there have been more than a dozen races decided by a single vote or ending in a tie over the last 20 years. Among these were a 2002 primary election for a Washington state House seat, which was determined by one vote out of more than 11,000 cast. Perhaps even more astonishingly was an Alaskan state House primary, which resulted in a tie and was ultimately decided by a coin toss. But the most famed example of a close call in an American election is that of the 2000 presidential election, where George Bush carried Florida, the deciding state, and won by leading Democratic candidate Al Gore there by a margin of less than 600 votes. To put that into perspective, a general election for President of the United States of America was decided by a number of people less than the seating capacity of some commercial airplanes. And who could imagine what the political climate would be like today if just a handful of people had done things differently? Who would be president right now? What laws and economic policies would have been established between now and then? How much would a gallon of gas cost? Many aspects of the lives we live in the present were predetermined by the ballots of a few hundred Floridians cast 20 years in the past. What do you think? Do you think their votes mattered? In conclusion, the bottom line is that the United States has a voting problem. So many people aren't getting out to vote, and because much of the non-voting population is comprised of younger people, their concerns may not be met as earnestly by politicians and lawmakers. And although history has proven many times that an election may be decided by the actions of a few determined individuals, voter turnout remains concerningly low, and consequentially, Americans aren't getting the representation they deserve. So, how can we make a difference? Luckily, the solution is the easiest part. All that we need to do is give ourselves a little push and commit to casting our ballots in elections that affect us. If we simply vote and do our part to encourage our fellow citizens, young and old alike, to do the same, then perhaps we will be able to secure a future with a more perfect union and a government that hears the voices of every American.